it is 3 days to the February the 10th deadline issued by the Central Bank of Nigeria for the return of old naira notes, and Nigerians still cannot lay their hands on the new notes. Daily, Nigerians spend hours at the banks and ATMs trying to access their monies to no avail. Many now rely on POS operators who now charge outrageous rates for cash withdrawals. And while many Nigerians are going through this torture, videos of some influential Nigerians spraying bundles of the new naira notes have surfaced online, giving life to speculations that bankers are making brisk business, selling the new notes to the highest bidder. The FCC, ICPC, and other anti-corruption agencies have begun going after banks and bankers hoarding the new notes, as well as Nigerians abusing the naira. Before we introduce our guest, let's hear the experience from some Lagosians in trying to access the new notes.
It's obvious, it's on the news. The banks are hoarding cash. I don't know why that is. They're not spending. The ICPC and the EFCC have been going around, and the CBN, I beg your pardon, have been going around busting vaults and checking a lot of them. We're seeing a lot of them that are hoarding cash, and I don't know why that is. Maybe they're the ones giving cash to the guys changing money in events and all that. I don't know why that is, but it is what it is.
And obviously, when you get to my top market, those abokis there, they don't understand the statement of transfer. All they want is their cash. And there's no cash from the bank. So how do we transact our business? How do we make our purchases? So it became a very difficult problem for us.
Even now, as I talk to you, I'm trying to load my phone. The network is not even connected. I can't call. I've been using my calling phone. I need to call. I need to do some delivery this morning. I need to start calling. Who do I call for customers? It's so crazy. I don't know.
It has been so very difficult on us as a businesswoman and also as a family. We've not been able to get cash. In fact, we move around now without cash because when you get to the bank, they don't have money to give you. And even when I went to the bank, to collect some cash, and I was given like 50 naira. What would I use? How would you take that?
And we know how this thing works in the IT space. So the situation is very terrible, and this thing doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. How people have money in the bank, and you are telling people how to spend their money. They should look at the situation of things.
It's very bad, very terrible. And me, I'm saying it. This thing is going to be second SARS in this Nigeria. If this thing continues in the next 1 week, SARS is small. It's already happening in other states. We are seeing it. In Lagos State here, not that we are foolish, but we are giving them time. They should think. We are not foolish. This time our eyes are open.
I've been here since 8 o'clock, from one branch to another, no access to rich money. The worst thing is that no money on the counter. We have to go and find your ATM. Even though if you are not at ATM, you must find ATM and get to the ATM counter. And the maximum payment is 10. I have money in my account. I don't have access to reach it. Where are we being? What are we doing? Why are we suffering ourselves?
Lagosians there, reeling out their experience. Joining us via Zoom is the managing partner of HighNet Resources Limited, Vivian Ani, to speak with us on this. Vivian, good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Good morning. Right. Yeah. Right from 1962, 1973, 1984, 2010, 2014, when we made changes to our legal tender, we didn't witness this kind of challenges that we are seeing now. What in your view do you think has gone wrong with regards to the redesign and all of the policies that the CBN brought about at this time and the challenges we are witnessing? What is the missing link?
All right, like you already said, we've done this before and it didn't come with this amount of chaos. So something tells me that there's a lot behind the scenes that was not adequately addressed before rolling out the policy. I read this morning that a CBN official was asked how much of the new currency was actually printed, and he couldn't say how much it was. So that means that a lot of things that were supposed to have been done behind the scenes were not done, and that's why we're witnessing the huge amount of chaos that this has unleashed. And then again, when you now come to I think the first CBN circular said that customers could only withdraw 100,000 naira, per week over the counter, and while corporate bodies could withdraw 500,000. To be honest with you, I didn't take them seriously because I just said to myself, this is totally and completely impractical. How do you come and say this sort of thing? But as the days unfolded, as events unfolded, it was clear that they were serious. But I thought that if for to come out to say such a thing, that means they had done all the behind the scenes. What we're seeing now is what is happening, front end. But I thought back end behind the scenes that they had done everything and made sure that everything was going to roll out seamlessly. We have we have about 3 point something trillion naira, cash in circulation, and then according to the CBN, again, they said that 85% of that 3 point something trillion in circulation is outside the banking system. So I would have expected at least they had looked at all the corners, made adequate arrangements, factored in the human element, meaning that people are going to get funny, people are going to do things like hoarding and all that before, unleashing this policy upon us. So in summary, the biggest issues happen behind the scene, and that is what is causing this chaos. It's not the policy itself. It's been done successfully before.
All right, Vivian, the president has said that the 4 months that was given for this policy to take off and be implemented was adequate for anyone, anywhere in the world, especially within the country, to return whatever amount of money they have to the banks and get a swap and all of that. But from your perspective and comparing it to what other countries have done around the world and the peculiarity of Nigeria, do you think this number of months is enough for this policy to have taken off seamlessly?
Look, it's enough. Like I said, the problem was, CBN itself did not do what they were supposed to do behind the scenes. Okay, you asked people to go take their money to the banks and get swapped. I didn't see the new naira note up until about 2 weeks ago because all the banks kept saying they did not have the new naira notes. So as soon as CBN saw what was happening, as soon as CBN saw that most people, and this thing was well documented in the media, that most people had not seen the new naira notes, the first thing that should tell them is that should come to their minds is that there's something going on. If CBN claims that they give new naira notes to the bank in enough volume for the public not to feel the scarcity of new naira notes, within the 4 months, there was more than enough time for CBN to track and to monitor. And for crying out loud, how do you do this sort of thing without putting in place a special task force within the central bank itself? Call it a task force, call it a committee, call it whatever you want to call it, but a special group of people who are pulled aside from their day-to-day duties and who are monitoring what you're asking the public to do, vis-a-vis the public's own experiences with the banks, to understand whether they are missing gaps, whether they need to go back and rejig the process. I think from experience, public officers cannot just sit down and say something and not know that the way it will play out in real life will not be the way they have said it's going to play out. We have seen this again. We saw this with the BVN. We saw this with the NIN. We saw this with the registration of SIM cards. So Nigeria has had enough experience to understand that it is very important. Once you've made a pronouncement, once you come out with a policy, you will now start to monitor. You will now start to ensure that the people, the intermediaries, and in this case it is the banks for this currency swap, are doing what they're supposed to be doing. If somebody like me, with all my exposure to the banking system, with the fact that I'm in one leg inside the banking system, I only saw the new naira note very, very recently. That tells you that there's something terribly wrong about the way this thing has been implemented. So it's not the amount of time. I tell you one thing, even if you're given 1 year, if you do not make sure that the banks have enough cash to go around, and you do not make sure that the banks themselves, who you've given enough cash to go around, do not exploit the fact that there's going to be a currency redesign to make it into a business of making sure that customers do not get the currency, even though they have it in their vaults, then it means that you're totally and completely out of touch with how Nigeria runs. And it's not just Nigeria. I tell you, globally, we all read the global newspapers. Globally, whenever there's a demand, and loopholes exist within the way it is implemented. Criminals, bandits, fraudulent people will find a way to make sure that it works to their own advantage and not to the advantage of the people who are supposed to be the ones who need to carry out the activities or services with whatever item it is. So if you hear about black markets, it's not just in Nigeria. So it's not about timing. It's not about 4 months. 4 months is enough. Well, however, CBN just let's be honest, CBN really did not do what they were supposed to do.
And Vivian, if you can hear me, there are cases in court already. Some governors of Kogi, Kaduna, and Zamfara State have approached the apex court, that's the Supreme Court, to stop, to ensure that the CBN and the president extend the deadline from February the 10th so as to address this matter of hardship that Nigerians are facing. And there are some political parties who have come together, went to a federal high court in the Federal Capital Territory, issuing an order for the president not to extend beyond the February the 10th deadline. Where do you stand with regards to this matter? Should we extend, looking at the hardship that Nigerians are facing, or do you think that we should just remain where we are, February the 10th, and the president and the CBN should do whatever they can to address it within these coming days?
Well, I read this morning that the judge has already ruled and said that the deadline should not be extended, that the deadline has to stand as it is. So that means really the matter has been taken out of our hands. I don't know what level that judge is at. I don't know what court level, but it's definitely not the Supreme Court, because in this case, it was just a judge who ruled. So if it goes all the way to the Supreme Court, we don't know what they're going to say. But I tell you something, whether or not that deadline stands, whether we abide by the deadline or whether they reverse the deadline, the damage has already been done. Honestly, the damage, when you look at all the so-called reasons for this policy, each time government does this and puts Nigerians through this kind of horrendous stress. And like I said, this is not the first time. We've been through all manners of things. And I hear that they're even rolling out another one, which is the Nigerian domestic card. That means another stress, another madness, another chaos. Now, whether or not they tinker with this deadline, right? A lot of damage has already been done in the minds of Nigerians, but so for me, if by February 10th, where I will stand, the events are unfolding. And I'm sure even behind the scenes right now, CBN is going back to the drawing board, trying to think about how they're going to make these things better. Because you see, in the end, even though it is the common man that's mostly affected, because the people who are up there, they're getting their cash as normal. They're getting their cash as usual. Because of course the banks, if you put a big wig, a big person from CBN, and you put an honorary person on the road, you'll be sure that the big man from CBN is not even going to come to the bank to withdraw money. They're going to take that money to his office. The bankers will take that money to his office because they want to remain on his good side. Now, it is a common man who's going to the bank, has been told all this kind of stories. They're not giving him money. People, it's so bad. I don't know if you watched the viral WhatsApp videos that have been going around. It's so bad that people are stripping themselves naked in banks. I mean, how does anyone watch that and sleep well at night? How does anyone watch Nigerians stripping themselves naked in banking halls? And you know that you have something to do with this policy. You really can come out and say this madness should stop, and you sleep well at night. So let us watch and see how events unfold before February 10th. I think at this point that central bank has to go back to the drawing board. Look at this policy. If they believe that they don't want to go by the way of a deadline. Now, I don't want to come out and tell you I'm in support of the extension of the deadline, or I'm not in support of the extension of the deadline. Because in the end, even if you extend the deadline, all right, what you're doing is that you're just postponing Judgment Day. You're just kicking the can down the road. If you extend it, okay, so what if you extend it from February 10th and you still from February 10th to the new deadline, CBN does not do what they're supposed to do. They don't coordinate properly to ensure this thing does not happen again. Who says that even if you extend it till June or till December, the chaos is not going to repeat itself? Bottom line, the public is not getting access to new naira notes. The bank's online banking system, which The CBN said that this policy is supposed to push people into cashless, open up accounts, and blah, 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 using your phone. Have you tried using your phone to transfer money lately? If you try it, most of the performance is very epileptic, double debits, double credits, all sorts of things are going on. And at times you can't even access their systems at all, because when the banks were coming up with their electronic systems, they had planned for a certain number of users to be on those platforms at any given time. Now, all of a sudden, because of this policy, their own systems are overwhelmed by the number of people who are now doing online banking, whether using their phones or whether using the internet. So the systems are not performing the way they should perform. So you have now two things or three things. People cannot access the new currency. So let's even leave that, because the old currency is still legal tender. People are paying crazy amounts of money to get any money at all, whether new or old. And then at the same time, when you even say, okay, fine, I'm a Nigerian who's sophisticated enough to know how to use online banking channels or phone banking channels, most of the time it doesn't work. So it's not about extending the deadline. It's about CBN going back to the drawing board, right? And saying to themselves, look, how do we manage this thing such that people do not suffer through the stress? Yes, there might just be a bit of stress. But right now, if you look at on a scale of 1 to 10, the amount of stress people are putting people through, honestly, it even busts the 10 limit. CBN is putting people on a stress of 12 out of 10. And that means that it is horrendous stress. So CBN has to go back to the drawing board. It's not about extending or not extending deadlines. They have to go back to the drawing board. It's not rocket science. We all see videos where earthquakes hit Japan and carves up roads into two. And in 1 week, Japan fixes this thing. It means, and people in Japan are human beings, so they are not from outer space. It means that these things are not rocket science.
All
How
right.
many are we in
Vivian.
Nigeria? We are over 200 million people. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Vivian, the point there is the CBN has been concerned about the number of the unbanked population in Nigeria. And some people have said this is an opportunity to go cashless. In fact, the CBN had talked about this. But do you see this as the opportunity for Nigerians to begin to go cashless in that context?
Okay, now let me just create a scenario for you, right? You're going through all this stress to even get money just to feed yourself. In some cases, women are pregnant. They're trying to get into hospital to have babies. We've read cases of women who have died because the hospital refused to accept bank transfers and there was no cash to give the hospital. And you now say, in this thing that's going on, someone should look at it and say, this is the right time to open up a bank account. How is it possible? I feel personally angry about this. I feel, and for me, I can't talk about what's going on without getting emotional. Because ordinarily I should be, it should be cold and I should be dissecting issues. But the truth of it is that these are real human beings who are suffering. And they're talking about opening up bank accounts. Now, let me say something. All right, you come up with the currency redesign, right? And you say the whole aim is to make sure that people become formal members of the banking system. You know what? Right now, you're giving for people who have refused to come into the banking system, you are actually reiterating the reasons why. You're reinforcing the reasons why they should not come into the banking system. That's what CBN is doing. So to be honest, if this is all about putting people into the banking system, I'm afraid it doesn't work that way.
Right.
It doesn't work that way at all.
So if we are to clean up all of these challenges on the ground, and if the CBN is to do all of that, I'm not sure if 3 days is enough to achieve the cleanup, but what do you expect the CBN to do quickly?
What CBN has to do quickly is to have meetings with all the banks, and I'm not talking about meetings with low-level bankers. They have to have meetings with bank CEOs who will be held personally responsible and be told the consequences of getting new naira notes and not accessing it to the public. There are many angles to this issue. I think they're giving them, I think the president said you should be given 1 week to sort it out, and we're already inside the week, so it's probably about 3-4 days. Now that's the first step, because there are many angles to this crisis. So if they meet with the CEOs and say to them, look, we're giving you so amount of time to get your internal issues right. Now, even the withdrawal limits, even the withdrawal limits, they have to look at the withdrawal limits again. Yeah, because if you think the money, the withdrawal limits that they put in place is a lot of money, think about it. Inflation in Nigeria has hit over 20%. Right now, you carry 100,000 naira to any market. You can carry even 200,000 in a week. You will blow it without understanding what you've blown it on. And if the online banking channels are as epileptic as they currently are, it means that you relying on online banking channels to bridge the gap in the currency scarcity just might not work. So CBN, within these 3 or 4 days remaining out of the 1 week that they promise they're going to act, the first thing they should do is to have a meeting with bank CEOs. If it's an online meeting, because of the same cash crunch, a lot of those CEOs might not be able to make themselves available for a face-to-face meeting because they're battling crisis within their own banks. So even if it's an online meeting, for Pete's sake, let them do it. Let them do it and see whether that small part of the crisis, like I said, the crisis has many angles to it. So that little part that's between CBN, bank, and customer, at least address that one. And then start to think about how to address the other issues. 3 days, will it be enough? I don't know. For me, it's unlikely. I see this crisis is going to continue up until next week. Even if they extend the deadline, the crisis will still continue because people's problems are built up in their personal and official lives. So there's still going to be that crowd that you see in the banks. It's too late to say, oh, somebody makes another pronouncement in Abuja and the crowds will disappear. It's too late.
All right, Vivian, let me ask you this quickly. There is the issue of panic already from the viral videos that we're seeing, and there is also the issues of speculation. Do you think this phenomena of panic and speculation is compounding the issues?
When you say panic and speculation, this weekend I roamed around, because I don't want to go to the banks because I see the videos and I see what's going on in the banks. And I even see some banks are even distributing soft drinks on the terrible queues outside them. So I said to myself, no need going to any bank. Let me just see within my own neighborhood what I can manage. Because don't forget there's petrol scarcity. Don't forget that. So even moving around smoothly is a problem. Now, if you say panic and speculation, I roamed around throughout this weekend, looking for small cash, just small cash. Somebody needed to go somewhere and said, okay, the bus drivers are not going to take transfer, so I need to give the person a bit of cash to go around. So a lot of people have found themselves in different versions of what I went through this weekend. And I know how long it took me to even get the little amount of money that I eventually got from POS. And I paid a premium. I paid 1,000 naira to get 10,000 naira. So if you replicate what I'm going through by over 200 million Nigerians, all right? If you replicate what I went through over the weekend by 200 million Nigerians, how is the panic and how is the speculation? People need cash to pay certain kind of bills because our systems, our electronic systems, have not quite gotten to where we're all hoping it will get to. So it goes beyond panic and speculation. It's people have to pay real bills.
All right, Vivian, we can only hope that things get better in the coming days and the CBN addresses this matter as quickly as possible. But we must thank you, Managing Partner of HighNet Resources Limited, Vivian Ani, for your time on the program.